Welcome to the auditing features of Excel. You'll find all of the formula auditing tools on the Formulas ribbon. There's a section called Formula Auditing and there's a small gathering of buttons. We're going to take a look at each in turn. First of all, on this spreadsheet we've got some figures and some calculations. If we click on the total for the sales, we can find out the precedence of this. Now what this means is, how did this number arrive at this total? And it's almost like following a family tree, because if we come up to the Trace Precedence button and click, it draws a blue arrowed line indicating which 4 cells make up this one. And it's a good visual aid to know how a sheet has been put together, certainly if it's something that you didn't build yourself. Now the nice feature about this is that you can also trace the precedence back even further, because these 4 numbers make up this total here. But how did these 4 numbers arrive at these values? And if we trace the precedent button again, it goes back one step further. And you can now see it's indicating that these columns of numbers make up these totals. Now if we attempt to click the button Trace Precedence again, the system will indicate that it can't go any further. Those are the original start point numbers. And that's how you trace precedent. We can remove the blue arrows by clicking on the button called Remove Arrows. The other button we have is Trace Dependence. Now this allows you to see, for example, if we click on this cell here, B6, if I was to delete that number or make a change to it or alter it in any way, move it, which cells will that affect? In other words, what's dependent on that number? And so by clicking on Trace Dependence, you'll see it draws the blue arrows, and every cell that contains an arrowhead indicates that those cells will be altered. You can see that this number here feeds the total over here, the total here, and the total at the bottom of the sheet. Now of course, if you think about this logically, if this number here is changed, surely it will have a knock-on effect to this total here. So if we click Trace Dependence again, it will show us what is indirectly affected. And if we click Trace Dependence again, you'll see it continues to show us indirectly what will be affected. And like the Trace Precedent, when it gets to the end of the road, the system will beep and it will indicate that there's no further cells dependent on that number. If I now look at this sheet, by me altering, moving, deleting, changing this cell B6, it's going to affect half a dozen other cells in this sheet. Once again, we can remove the arrows. There's a button called Show Formulas. If you click on that, it will show you all of the cells that contain formulas, and it will indicate the formula and not the result, as you can see here. Now that might be useful for reference work if you're printing this out. You can toggle that button on and off. There's another button that's useful in here. It's called Evaluate Formula. Now this allows you to take a formula and break it down step by step. And we'll give you an example. If we take a look at, for example, this answer here, we can see the formula in the formula bar. Now, to make this easy for us to decipher, we can evaluate that formula. You select a cell that contains a formula, you click on the Evaluate Formula button, and it displays this dialog box here. You'll see it contains the formula. One thing to pay attention here is that it's underlined the first part of the formula, the B6. Now what it's asking is, if you evaluate that, we'll show you what the value is. And you'll see that it's telling me that that contains 39,889, which if we look over here, it does. It's now moved across to B13 and underlined that, and if we evaluate what that is, it tells me it's 12,798, which we can see is correct over here. It's then underlined both of those numbers, and it's going to evaluate what 39,000 minus 12,000 is, and it gives us the answer. It's now stepped across to the sum. Now this sum adds up three numbers, and if we evaluate, it comes to 26,044. It's now underlined that number divided by 4, which is 6,511. It's now underlined both of those, and we can evaluate that, which gives us the 20,580, which is the number down here. And that is the Evaluate formula. It's a great way of checking a formula, or if you're not familiar with the sheet, what numbers have been used in that formula, and you can step through one part at a time to see if it's working correctly or as you expect it to work. The final part of formula auditing is error checking. Now this is very similar to a spell check. What it will do is it will check each cell that contains a formula and make sure that it equates to an answer or is written correctly. Now we don't have any incorrect formulas on this sheet, so we'll create one. Let's do a deliberate mistake equals one of these numbers over here added to a piece of text. Now that's obvious that we can't add numbers to text, so it's going to equate to an error, which it is. Now if you had several of these errors, you could quite simply click anywhere near the top. Control Home is a good keystroke, Control Home, because that will always take you to the very top cell. You can then click on Error Checking, and it will go down the sheet row by row, cell by cell, checking, and when it comes to an error, it will display this box. Now it will show you the error, it will give you its opinion of why there's an error. You can ask for more help on this. You can show the calculation steps. This will actually run the Evaluate Formula tool. If there's nothing wrong with the formula, it's showing an error because maybe a number is missing at the moment, you can ignore the error and it will go on to the next one. You can even edit it in the formula bar. Now we know what the problem is, So we're just going to go to the next, and we can click on the button next and it will jump to the next error it encounters. Here it tells me there's no other errors, it's completed. We click OK. And that is error checking. Now you'll notice that beside that button is a little drop down, and we can choose to trace the error. Now this will show us visually using those blue arrowed lines where the values are coming from. And there you can see visually what it's picking up and make your own educated guess as to why you're getting an error. Once again, click on remove arrows to clear that.